Assalamu alaikum, I'm here with Novid Shaid, teacher, writer, poet. I'm going to be speaking to him today about the type of writing he does, the type of literature he enjoys, and the importance of good literature. So Novid, Jazakallah khair for taking the time out to speak to us at Muslim View.
Jazakallah khair.
So I want to start off with, what type of literature do you write and why do you choose those genres?
First of all, Sidi Masud, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to talk to you about my writing, and I'd like to also thank Dr. Atif as well. In terms of the type of writing that I do, primarily I write poetry. I'm heavily influenced by the writers of famous writers from English literature, including Wordsworth and Keats. I also write prose, so I write novels, and I'm trying to get into plays as well.
Excellent. So who are the main inspirations for your writing?
That's a difficult question. I would say main inspirations are the writers that I read during my GCSEs, for example. So Wilfred Owen is a great war poet that most people who were born and bred in England, they would have read some Wilfred Owen during their GCSEs. And Owen was a master of using the poetic devices within his poetry, and he was a young man. He was only 25 when he died during the war. But his poetry, I remember studying it at GCSE in year 11 or fifth form it was called when I was studying, and I was just amazed at the richness of the language that he used, even though it was on the depressing topic of World War I. But I was just amazed by his poetry, and that was a major influence on me. During my A-levels, I studied Seamus Heaney. There was also some Carol Ann Duffy that I studied as well, Dylan Thomas, and then I did my degree in English. So all of the writers that I studied had a major influence on me and impelled me, and also my own English teachers encouraged me to write.
Right.
So it's really kind of like my background in literature that led me towards writing it myself.
And what do you think about English literature amongst the British Muslim community and how to increase the appreciation of it?
I think that as Muslims in the West, we can underestimate the importance of literature, because if you engage with the stories of these people, the people from the past and the people in the present, then you get a sense of who these people are. English people, Welsh people, Scottish people, Irish. You get a sense of who they are as a people, their concerns, the journey that they've been on, and it makes you appreciate just who they are. And I think that it helps you to kind of link to them in a deeper way. I'm not saying that everyone has to read literature, but I think that certainly within literate Muslims, we shouldn't underestimate the importance of reading the stories of other people, because it makes you understand who they are. And I think that sometimes we lack that understanding, we lack that appreciation. And it comes across. I think the non-Muslims now some of them are becoming very impatient with Muslims. And perhaps it's because we haven't engaged with them in their culture enough. And there are famous examples of Sahaba who they learned the language of the places they went to, and they also read. They learned the language, they read their literature. And I think there's something that we can do.
So, you touched on the fact of appreciating other people's and other cultures' literature to enhance the understanding. Now, in terms of, you mentioned how some British people have not a problem with Muslims, but they have a lack of understanding of Muslims. Do you think the development of Muslim-based, dare I say, Islamic literature can act as a mechanism by which non-Muslims can understand Muslims better?
That's one of the reasons that I write. It's to try and put across my experience as a Muslim, my experience of spirituality, my experience of living as a Muslim in the 21st century. That's what I'm hoping to do. And I read parts of the Prophet's time in rhyme to a non-Muslim audience recently in Aylesbury.
And that's this book here that you recently
that's
published.
my new book of poetry, which I've self-published through Amazon. And there were people who came up to me afterwards, and they just appreciated the fact that I had written in the English language, and they understood most of what I was saying, and they were quite fascinated by, oh, this is a story about the Prophet's birth, and you're telling it through English verse, and they could recognise the style that I'd written it in. So, yeah, I feel that in terms of Muslims, for me, I think what I'm doing is I'm a so-called practicing Muslim. I'm somebody that I try to take the Sunnah, following the Sunnah seriously. I'm lacking in that area, but I try to take it seriously. I try to be dedicated to my faith, and I do want to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I come from that background, and I'm writing fiction, and I'm writing poetry, and so I think it's interesting just to hear what we have to say, and it's interesting to see how we kind of engage with these type of literatures, because we all know that English lit, it can be extremely, how can we say, irreligious. The British tradition of cynicism is definitely apparent in literature, and the English people have satirized religion a great deal within their literature. But then there are people who are strong Christians. C.S. Lewis, for example. He gets across Christian metaphysics through his books, through the Narnia books. So, I'm a practicing Muslim, and I know there are lots of Muslims who've written novels. The main one that comes to mind is the Afghani writer, A Thousand Splendid Suns. Those type of books, I think there are lots of Muslims out there who write, but there are not many practicing Muslims writing, and I think it's important for us to get our ideas out there, because people are beginning to think that we're crazy, but actually there's a human side to us.
So what do you see as the main challenges for Muslim writers, and how do you see the British Muslim or the British Muslim Islamic literature scene developing?
I think there are many challenges. I think that one, sounding authentic, and trying to kind of move away from this kind of artificial label of Islamic literature. That's important.
Do you think there's a danger of taking your Islamic literature too seriously, that it becomes sermonizing?
Yes, it can do, and I think it's already happened. There are some well-intentioned kind of writers out there, but what they've basically done is to present a story and to make it a kind of like a moralistic tale, which can be told in mosque or part of the sabak classes. And that's not, I don't think that's a really kind of, there isn't the substance in that type of endeavour, I feel. I feel that writers, like me, and people who are interested in fiction and in literature, we need to get our experience across, and we need to write in the best way possible. And that's something that I'm trying to do. That's something that I'm working on. So
in terms of literature, good literature is good literature regardless of who's written it.
Regardless, exactly. Yeah. If you look at the Narnia novels, if you look at Ursula Le Guin, one of my favourite writers is Ursula Le Guin, particularly her Wizard of the Sea. And why is it a timeless classic? Well, it's the power of the characters, the power of the story, and there is an overriding kind of spiritual, mystical idea behind these books. And people, whether they subscribe to it or not, they appreciate that piece of writing, and I think that's what I aim to do. Haven't got there yet, but inshallah I aim to do that.
So have you read many other Muslim writers?
When you say Muslim writers, do you mean come from ancient times?
Well, ancient times as well. And clearly the Muslim tradition has an ancient tradition of poetry.
Yes.
And in some cases fictional. I mean, Layla Majnun is, whether they exist or not, we don't know. So that is a fictional account of love. I mean, divine love, or even some people would take it as a profane love. But there is a tradition of fiction amongst Muslims. Why do you think, and I think I've digressed onto another area.
That's a good digression.
Why do you think that we've lost that tradition?
I feel that we've become too formalised. We've become so scared of going against the Sunnah that we've lost the spirit of the Sunnah. So, for example, the Masnavi of Sayyidina Jalaluddin Rumi, may Allah bless him, and the Conference of the Birds by Farid al-Attar, may Allah bless him. These two works have universal acceptance. Maybe people who are kind of really focused on following the Sunnah and Sharia they may not appreciate these two works, but it cannot be denied that people for centuries, Muslims and non-Muslims, appreciate these works. So there must be something in there. There must be something in there. And I feel that we've become so engrossed in avoiding the haram that we have kind of become blind to the beauty in.
So it's an overcautiousness, I think. Perhaps that there's something that we may consider to be haram, when in fact they probably aren't.
Yeah, and I think it's partly due to the explosion of English, the English language, and of English literature as a form of expression, that people are very careful about this, because people feel that English culture and Western culture is taking over the world, and particularly the Muslim world, and so there is the backlash against it. And part of this backlash is we try to avoid wearing Western clothing, and we avoid their culture. And I think that type of movement, I understand where it comes from, and I feel that it is important that you have your own distinct culture, and that you avoid the haram. But in doing so, you can become too formalistic, and in my opinion, sometimes you might go away from the spirit of the Sunnah. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was interested in other people. He was naturally interested in other people. They loved him because he showed respect to who they are. And he I don't think he was the type of person who said that, I've got no interest in your stories and what you have to say. He was somebody that would listen, and then he would put his point across. So that's what we should do within our literature, is that we should put our views across, read and listen to what people from other cultures and faiths have to say, but then put our point across as well.
Cool. So what are your plans, your future plans for your writing?
Well, I've got a few works in the pipeline. I have a book called the Confessions of a Muslim English Teacher, and that's where I'm exploring this kind of lifelong issue that I've had. Can I be a practicing strict Muslim and also enjoy and write English literature myself? I've also got a mystical novel called The Journey Overboard, which was influenced by the Conference of the Birds. I also have that I'm writing. I have a play that I've written, which is called The War of the Lift and Separatists, and I'm trying to get that people, theatre groups interested in that. So yeah, I hope to write more, to get wider recognition. I hope to really develop the standard of my art, of my writing, so that I can reach that kind of recognition. And my main goal is to inspire people and to gain reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing that, and to ascribe my works to Allah. Allah is the one who does it in the first place, and we are just vessels by which he does his works.
And your latest book, The Prophet's Time in Rhyme, what was the inspiration behind it? I mean, obviously the Prophet is inspiration enough for most people, but was there anything specific behind it?
The Prophet's Time in Rhyme, I'm somebody that sat in gatherings where the Mawlid of the Prophet ﷺ is read. I've sat in the Dalal al-Khairat gatherings with Sheikh Ahmed Babakar. Within my own brothers and sisters, we read Mawlids. I've sat in Mawlids in Jordan and Syria and different countries, and I've experienced the beauty of just hearing the story of the Prophet ﷺ in a different language, where people are gaining that benefit. So I thought about writing a similar kind of thing, but in the English language. And I hope this book will develop into a longer narrative poem about the Prophet ﷺ, where people from an English-speaking background, they can read it, children can read it, and it will teach them just the basic parts of the Prophet's life, but also it will increase their love in the Prophet ﷺ.
So that's available from Amazon? Yeah,
it's Amazon. It's £6 from Amazon. You can buy it from there, and I hope to also go around to different events and to sell it there as well.
Okay. Jazakallah khair.